Welcome to the new podcast, In the Garden with Susan. I'm your host, Susan Ladner. I will aim to bring you top quality information on how to save open pollinated seeds, grow a garden, and preserve what you grow. Every Wednesday, I'll be sharing practical tips and techniques to help you on your journey to food security. Join me as I preserve the abundance of produce that my garden provides. Learn new ways of putting food away for the winter and some old ways that are from another century. You can find this podcast on Shopify and at my website. Come on, let's go wander down to the garden and awaken the dreams, history, and love that is held inside every seed. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of In the Garden with Susan. And today we're continuing on in our Flower Power series and only talking about the edible parts of flowers. However, today I am slipping in a few seeds just because I find it very unique, their uses, and it's something that I just learned about. And so we'll get into that also. And so today we're going to start with the edible sweet pea flowers. And what really got me onto this was, I don't know if you guys watch on Instagram, Baker Creek Rare Seeds. They have such a fantastic channel and the most amazing little videos almost every day, but I really love them. And so the one day they were showing how sweet peas you could make tea and add some, as he calls it, lemon milk to it, and it turns a vibrant color. And so I was very intrigued because I never knew about this before. So I did a little bit of research into this. And I want to first clarify, and I'm not sure, I've been so busy, and usually when I see things on Instagram or anything else like that, it's while I'm either drinking some coffee or eating some food, and I just come in and I'm nourishing myself, trying to get some energy before I go back out to the garden. So some of this stuff is, I put it on and I just have it there, to have a little bit of entertainment in these little short bursts. And I didn't really fully pay attention to if they talked about if sweet peas are all edible. But from what I found, and I don't know if this is really correct 100%, but I tried to find as much as I could, that not all sweet peas are edible. And so the ornamental sweet peas, the Lathyrus odoratus, I have me in Latin, my mouth does not like to form Latin words, just to put that out there. And plus when I see the Latin words and I have to say them out loud, I have this moment of stress. And I think that tightens me all up where I can't get them out of my mouth. But anyway, so the ornamental sweet peas are actually toxic if ingested. And so there are varieties of peas where the flowers are safe to eat, and those are from the species Pisum sativum. And I'm probably saying that wrong also because that oh my gosh. Anyway, so maybe it's Pisum sativum. And these are typically grown for their pods. So make sure that you're using the edible variety before consumption. And if anybody has any information that this is not correct, that all sweet peas are edible, please let me know and leave a message for me somewhere, because I would really like to know. So what I'm understanding, basically, if you're growing some peas in the garden and they are the edible kind, and so you're going to either be getting a pod from them, well, that's why you're growing them. Well, no, you can also grow them for the greens. I have, trays of microgreens growing for the pea seeds. But anyway, those are the types that you'll want to be using to eat. So if you have any sweet peas that really smell, the really smelly ones, you're not going to want to use those. And so the edible pea flowers can add a splash of color and subtle sweet flavor to various dishes. And so you can use them in salads, and you can use them as garnishes, and you can infuse them. And so you'll steep the flowers in hot water to make a lightly flavored tea, or infuse them into syrups for uses in drinks or desserts. And so one recipe I found was the sweet pea flower salad. And you're going to want to take a handful of fresh edible sweet pea flowers, excuse me, mixed salad greens, sliced cucumber, cherry tomatoes halved, feta cheese, olive oil, and lemon juice for dressing. And just gently wash the sweet pea flowers and pat them dry. Combine the salad greens, cucumber, and tomatoes in a bowl. Add the sweet pea flowers and feta cheese on top and drizzle with olive oil and a squeeze of lemon juice. Toss lightly and serve. And that sounds good. And then there's also the sweet pea flower ice cubes. You just put your sweet peas in with water and freeze them. And also, just one thing to note is with edible flowers, you want to use them sparingly to complement a dish and not overpower it. So just a few here and there. And so making the tea with the pea flowers and adding lemon juice can be a delightful way to enjoy the subtle flower flavors of the flowers, and the sweet pea flowers impart a mild, sweet flavor to the tea, which is often described as slightly grassy with floral notes. And adding the lemon juice not only enhances the flavor with a zesty, citrusy flavor, but can also change the color of the tea, making it more visually appealing. And so to prepare the sweet pea flower tea, you typically infuse the edible flowers in hot water for several minutes. It's similar to brewing any other herbal tea. And after straining out the flowers, you put a little bit of lemon juice in there. You can do a squeeze of lemon juice, and that can be added before serving. And the acidity of the lemon will interact with the natural pigments in the flowers, and it will occasionally change the tea's hue to a more vibrant tone. And while the primary appeal of sweet pea flower tea is taste and aesthetic, the addition of the lemon boosts the vitamin C content, and this is beneficial. And so I have a recipe here for the sweet pea flower tea, and I'll just put that down in the show notes below. And yeah, so that's just one thing I really would like to it says, the sweet pea, the Lathyrus odoratus, they're ornamental and they're not edible, and they are toxic if ingested. And so there we go. Now I want to talk about how to preserve them, because we're so busy, we don't always have time to be making all these recipes in the well, at this time of year anyway. It's getting the garden in. And just a side note, like, I have a lot of peas that are starting to go to flower, and some of them are very beautiful. And I mean, yes, I'm a seed company, so I see those flowers as going to pod and then to seed. So I really don't think that, I'll be making any, I won't be using any sweet peas this year until I get to a point where I can, maybe have tons and tons growing. However, they are more useful to me as seeds. However, I think a lot of people might be able to have the flowers in abundance and use them. And so drying is the most common method for preserving flowers for culinary use. And you can just air dry them by tying the sweet pea flowers into small bunches and hanging them upside down in a dry, dark, and ventilated area, and it'll usually take a few weeks for the flowers to dry down completely. Or you can use a dehydrator and set it to a low temperature, around 95 to 115 degrees Fahrenheit, and this will take about 12 to 24 hours to dry them. I would say 12. 24 is pushing it a little too far. And once they're dry, store the flowers in an airtight container in a cool, dark place to maintain their color and aroma. You can also press them, and traditional pressing is placing the flowers between two sheets of absorbent paper and then weighing them down with heavy books, or use a flower press and leave them for 2 to 3 weeks until fully dried and pressed. And you can freeze them. You can put them in the ice cube trays with water and that's perfect for drinks and punch bowls. Or you can also just simply place the fresh flowers in an airtight freezer bag and freeze them. However, they might not retain their shape as well as when frozen in ice cubes. And you can now also do sugar preservation. You can do the candying, where you lightly brush the flowers with the lightly beaten egg white and sprinkle super fine sugar on them and let them dry on a wire rack. Or you can also layer them in sugar, and layering the flowers with sugar in an airtight container to infuse the sugar with their flavor. And this can then be used for baking or tea. And so now I want to talk about clover flowers, because I'm starting to see them all over the place. When I go outside, they're growing all around me, and I want to use, like, there's an abundance of them. So how can I use these while I see them? And edible clover flowers are a delightful and nutritious addition to various dishes. Both the red clover and the white clover are commonly used for culinary purposes. And so how do we use them? Well, the clover flowers have a mild, sweet flavor, and they can be used in salads. They can just be tossed in for a colorful, nutritious addition. They can be used in teas. They're very popular for making herbal teas, and they can be brewed alone or mixed with other herbs. They can be made into syrups and jams. And the sweet nature of clover flowers makes them suitable for syrups and jams, which can be used to flavor desserts or spread on bread. And baked goods. Dried clover flowers can be added to breads, muffins, and other baked goods for flavor and decoration. And then I just have a recipe for the clover tea, which everybody knows how to make tea, but I'll put these recipes in the show notes below. And then we have a clover flower salad, and you take a handful of fresh clover flowers and then some mixed greens such as lettuce or spinach or other greens. And then you can put in some other salad toppings like nuts, fruits, or cheese, and your dressing of choice. And you just mix them all together and put the dressing on right before serving. And so now for preserving the clover flowers, um, you can dry them by hanging them in bunches or laying them on a screen in a dry, warm area away from direct sunlight. And once dried, store them in an airtight container. You can freeze them by putting them in the ice cube trays with water to create floral ice cubes, or you can simply store them in freezer bags for later use. And clover flower syrup can be made by simmering the flowers with water and sugar until the mixture thickens. And this syrup can be preserved by canning or stored in the refrigerator. And then you have candying also, which we talk about how to do that all the time. And so basically, the culinary uses for dried clover flowers are the tea, and they are blended very well with other herbs such as mint, chamomile, and lemon balm, which I have an abundance of all three of those guys out in my garden right now. And baking, they can be sprinkled. You can put them in doughs for breads, scones, and cookies. And they're also a beautiful edible decoration on top of cakes and cupcakes. You can put them in as a salad topping. They also can be used as a seasoning blend. And you grind dried clover flowers into a fine powder and mix with other dried herbs and spices to create custom seasoning blends, and this can be used to flavor stews, soups, and marinades, or as a rub for meats and vegetables. And they can be used as a garnish and also infused into sugar. And you just put the dried clover flowers with granulated sugar into a jar to create a beautifully flavored sugar. And this can be used in your baking, tea, or coffee to add a sweet and floral twist. And so now we're going to talk about the dandelion flowers. And they are a highly versatile and nutritious edible flower. They are celebrated for their health benefits. And so we know that every part of the dandelion is edible, but today we just want to focus on the edible flower power. And so how are we going to use them? We can put them into fresh salads, and the fresh dandelion flowers can add a bright and slightly bitter note to salads. And so you can mix them with sweeter greens to balance their bitterness. You can make dandelion flower syrup, and I love this stuff. I still have a few jars of it left, and I made it with, instead of the lemon, in the recipe I put orange, and wow, like putting that in a chamomile tea is, it's it's amazing. You can also make fritters, and I have a recipe for the fritters, and I'll just put it in the show notes below. And tea, you can make a tea with it, and some people choose to make wine with it. And so, yeah, how to preserve them? You can dry them. And it says here that some of the stuff I found about hanging them in bunches and drying, I don't know how that's going to work. Actually, that's not going to work. I've done a lot of, I've tried to preserve dandelion flowers quite, every year I do. And I usually don't do a lot of preservation of them because it is a lot of work and this is such a busy time with the garden. But when I have just taken, the first time I dried them was the gong show, and I was so pleased with myself. I picked tons and tons of these flowers, and I put them all on the dehydrator trays, and they all turned to seed. It was just one big fluffy mess. And so, I find there is some sort of a delicate balance on how to get them dried. You need to dry them really quickly. So hanging them to dry, it's not going to work. You're just going to get fluff all over the place. So I find the best, like, and I did dry some flowers this year, and I put them in my sun oven to try and get them, because I don't have electricity. Well, I do, but to be running a dehydrator off my solar panels, that's, I just don't think, efficient. And they got a little fluffy, but the best way I found is to freeze them, because you're going to retain more of that original flower, the original flowers, and not get so much fluff. And so you can freeze fresh dandelion flowers in ice cube trays with water. And then you can also preserve them directly into the freezer bags for cooking. And it is a very time consuming process. You do want to pick just the petals off. You just want to preserve the petals. And you can also make an infusion. So you just cover them with just the petals. You cover them with a neutral oil in a jar and let them sit in a sunny spot for several weeks, and then you can strain and use the oil in salad dressings or for cooking. And I just want to make another little reminder, public service announcement. Please do not use canola oil. You'll want to use a healthy oil like olive oil, or maybe even coconut oil, although I think the flavor of coconut oil might overpower it. So I would use olive oil. And then now, so for using, how are we going to use these guys now that we've got them dried? And it's winter time, you can put them in teas. You can use them in teas, Or you can also rehydrate them in water to use in recipes like fritters or salads. The frozen flowers can be added directly to smoothies, or they can be used in recipes where the fresh flowers are called for. And so, yeah, and this is something I just saw. I actually just recently saw this, and someone had a blog post about this, and I didn't have time to read it, but it was talking about the dandelion seeds. And I've never heard anything about that before. And so dandelion seeds, they can you can toast them. They are edible, and so they can be used similar to sesame or sunflower seeds. And dandelion seeds can be toasted in a dry pan until they become fragrant. And then you can sprinkle them over top of salads where you want a crunchy texture and a nutty flavor. You can make dandelion seed milk, and you just blend them with water, vanilla, and dates. And this will give you a nutritious drink that can be enjoyed on its own or used as a milk substitute. You can make dandelion seed muffins. The dandelion seeds can replace poppy seeds in muffin recipes, and they have a unique texture and flavor for the baked goods. You can make dandelion seed bars and crackers. You can use them as flour. Ground dandelion seeds can be used to make a gluten-free flour suitable for baking cookies and other treats that do not require gluten for structure. And you can make an oatmeal. And I don't know how many days it's going to take you to collect all these seeds to be doing this stuff. However, this is just something. So we know about there is food out there if we miss them after if we miss the flowers. And I wanted to know, like, how are we collecting these guys? And so it's pretty straightforward, but it does require some timing. And because the nature of these seeds, they just blow away. And so you wait until the dandelion flowers turn into fluffy seed heads, and this will happen after the yellow flowers have matured and dried out. And it's best to collect them on a dry day where there's no rain or dew, because the moisture can cause the seeds to clump together and reduce their viability. And you just cut the seeds heads. So you use scissors to snip the seed heads off. And it's a good idea to have a bag or container directly underneath while cutting them. So I would just probably take out like a big pot and just cut them so you can actually move quite fast. And then you hold the seed head over the container and gently pull the seeds away from the fluffy head. You can also tap them gently to release the seeds. There's a few different ways. And then once they're collected, you just have to separate them, put them through a mesh or lightly blow on them, and store them. So there's that, something a little bit off topic, but nonetheless kind of interesting, some food out there. And now we're going to talk about another flower that I see every time I go into my garden. And so I've been thinking about them, and they are the caraway flowers. And they are edible, and they can be used in various culinary ways. And the flowers are delicate, and they offer a milder version of the characteristic flavor of the caraway seeds. And so you can put the caraway flowers into salads, and they add a unique flavor and decorative touch. They can be used as a garnish, and they can also be infused with vinegar or oils to create flavored condiments for cooking or dressings. And you can make a caraway flower vinegar. Um, and so we've talked about how to infuse the flowers into vinegar. And then you can also how to preserve them. You can dry them, and they can be dried by hanging them in a dry, ventilated place away from direct sunlight. And you can also freeze them, although this is not as common. You can freeze them in ice cube trays covered with water, and these can be used in cooking later on. And so Yeah, and then now another flower that I keep seeing is the California poppy. And I've been thinking a lot about them because I adore them. I just find them so small and delicate, and they just add such a nice color to this time of year. And I mean, in my garden number one, they're like a perennial there. They come back, and it's always so delightful to see that orange popping out of the green because I have most of my garlic varieties down in garden number one, and there's all this green and then this orange, and it looks just beautiful. So I was like, I wonder if those guys are edible. And because I do know that there you can make tinctures from them, and there are many medicinal qualities, but I was thinking, can they be consumed? I know they're delicate, but I just was wondering. And so what I found was that California poppy flowers, while not commonly consumed as food, that have been used for their medicinal properties. And traditionally, Native Americans used parts of the plant, including the leaves and flowers, for various purposes. And the flowers have been included in chewing gum blends and used medicinally rather than a standard food source. And in terms of culinary use, the California poppy typically isn't eaten, but the flowers can be used fresh in salads or similar to how you might use marigolds or calendula. And we get into those two guys next week. And so they're often used as a garnish due to their bright and appealing color. However, they tend to wilt quickly after being picked, so you must use them immediately after harvesting. And for preserving them, the flowers can be dried on a drying screen for later use in making teas, infusions, tinctures, and drying reduces their size significantly. So collecting a substantial amount at once is advisable if you plan to use them throughout the year. And yeah, very interesting. And so basically, the California poppy flowers, even though they're not really used in cooking, their vibrant appearance and medicinal benefits make them valuable in addition to home herbal teas, and these aid with sleep, anxiety, and pain relief. And so that is our show of the day. Next week, I'm not sure if I'm cutting it off kind of quickly. I really need to get out to the garden, and so next week we're gonna talk about we're gonna get into marigolds and things like that, and so and any other we're gonna talk about any other flowers that I see growing around because that just draws my attention, and I like to know if what I can use as I'm seeing it. So I hope everyone is having a wonderful time planting up a storm. I hope everyone's gardens are all in, although it's never really that your garden is all in. Not for me. When I first started gardening, I was sort of like that, but now I continuously plant. I mean, yes, there's some things you can't. Of course, I'm not starting, some of the longer crops. Like I wouldn't be starting pepper seeds, but there are some varieties of plants that you can start in the summer for your fall garden, and I layer them. But that's a topic for another podcast, and maybe I'll get into that closer to the time about fall gardens and things like that. So for me, it's a continuous time of planting. I seem to be always, planting something like, at least every couple days I start things. And especially some things like the lettuce, like you want to, keep planting those so you continually have fresh greens. However, I'm rambling and rambling. So I will see you guys next week, and I may see you in the garden. Thank you for joining me for this episode of In the Garden with Susan. I hope you're enjoying the Flower Power series. And as we look at all the different edible flowers, you can find this podcast and others at Spotify, Podchaser, Radio Public. It's on my Rumble channel. It's on my YouTube channel. And you can always find it at my website at www.gardenfairybotanicals.ca. I look forward to chatting with you next week when we will continue on our journey through the edible flowers.